Okay. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Ingeborg. The channel is A Stitch Too Far. I'm back with an update on my stitching and a rant and some Dutch facts and some haul and whatever comes to mind. How are you guys doing? I hope you are well. I'm good. It's been a rough year again, but we'll get through it, right? Let's see. Yeah, there's going to be like a bit of a red thread going throughout my video, I think, because we're going to touch on the subject of crime a few times. So if I have your interest piqued, then I would suggest grab a drink and let's chat. So, some of the stitching, I guess most of you are interested in that, so I'll do that first. I finished the Blue Roses by Art Stitch. Can't remember when I finished it, but it's done. And here's the result. There's like a top, there's like a line on the bottom and the top. I didn't do that, but other than that, it's done. And I'm really pleased with how this turned out. Now just to find a way to finish it, but we'll see. And then the stuff that I have been working on. I'm currently still working on the Lives Matter Pincushion by Modern Folk Embroidery. This was a freebie sometime earlier this year. I think it was from a video by Jacob in February. I'll see if I can find the video and link you in the information box. But yeah, it's three parts, and I have done the back and the front bits. Now I'm working on the thing that goes around it. So I finished the lettering. I just need to fill in the background. And I'm using Silks for You silks, just 2 of the threads that came in my subscription sometime in the last 2 years. Really happy with how it's turning out. Then, what's in this bag? Oh yeah. Indian Inspiration by Mary Hickmott. Where is it? Looking for the picture. Just, have a sip of your drink while I'm struggling. Where is it? Come on. Oh, there you go. This is the full chart. I started at the bottom. And I remember talking about that I wasn't sure about the colors when I just got into it. But right now, I'm loving it. So it's going to be a really long piece, but here's the bottom row done. Look at that. Yeah, this will be a fun piece to do when I get stuck in my winter blues. Just some colors to keep me going. Let's see, what else have we got? I also worked on the Cornwall Cottage Sampler. And I started this on the top, and I've gotten a lot of the sides done as well. Oh, I will try and look for a picture because, as you can see, I have scrolled up my scroll rods, so there's not a lot to show. As you can see, I'm working my way down. So I will try and find a picture to show you my place where I was before I scrolled the bars. And then last but not least, I started the Japanese Maiden. This is an out of print kit. And I really got into it. So I did the two corners on the top and I started working on the main image. I ran out of one color actually in the background of this thing. Don't know how that happened, but it did, but I managed to figure it out. Yeah, this is a lot of fun to work on. These are a lot of half stitches and there is some mixing of threads, but mostly pretty clear to follow. So yeah, really enjoying this. And that's all the stitching that I did. All the projects that I worked on, I should say. Oh. So what else? Oh, I'm sorry about that. That was a bit loud. What else have I got to talk about? Well, I did some reading. And I did some puzzling. I found these. I don't know if you have ever seen these. These are Ravensburger puzzles. But they are escape puzzles. So what that means is that there's an image that you can make, which is similar to the image on the box, but not 100% the same. And there's a story that goes along with the image, and in all the border pieces there are numbers on the pieces, and you have to figure out clues from the image that you see and calculate the right numbers and pick those out, take those out of the edge and make a different little puzzle that you can actually use in the picture to solve the mystery. That was actually a lot of fun to do. The thing is, once you've done it once, you know what the end result should be. So that part of the puzzle sort of goes away, but it's still fun to have a puzzle to do. So I would recommend, if you are into puzzling, it might be fun to have a look at these. What else? I always like to try out new coffee brands, and I came across commercials of a Dutch coffee brand, which is called Zuiver Coffee. So I thought I would mention it for the people in the Netherlands or maybe in Belgium or Germany who might be interested. This is like a social impact project that is run from Dutch prisons to encourage people that are still incarcerated to start working on re-entry into society through the means of learning how to, I don't know, what's the word, burn coffee? Is that the right term? I don't know. We call it burning coffee, but so to properly make coffees, and they also have a tea line. And they have 3 types of coffee that you can actually order at the moment. I will leave a link in the description below. And they also have tea, which is actually very nice. I had already tried some. And I figured it's a good way to support this kind of project. So I'm going to try them out. If I like them, I will definitely reorder again. And then I had some haul, stitchy haul. There's a shop in the Netherlands that sells some cross-stitch stuff, and I get their newsletter, and there was a sale going on. And one of the things they had a sale on was tentaculum, which is a type of thread from Germany. I think this is called painter's thread. Yeah, painter's thread. You might have heard of that. And I got some for a very nice price, so I thought, you know what, I'll get a few and I can always use some nice threads. So these are all named after painters. So this one's named Clay, K-L-E-E, which is a nice brown, variegated brown. This one is called, these are different. This one is Cézanne. This one is a Turner, which has a bit more browns in it and this one has more blues in it. And this gold one is Klimt, of course. So yeah, I haven't stitched with any of these kinds of thread sheds, but they feel very soft, so I think they will be nice to work with. I think what's her name? Our friend in Paris. Oh God, I'm so bad with names. She stitched on, she used some of these threads, I think, so yeah, should be fine. And then they also had a few charts for very cheap, or kits, and I couldn't resist because most of these I had never seen before. So I got a little kit to make a like a little box, like a three-dimensional box. I've never seen this. I've seen the pattern before as a stitch pattern, but the Nutmeg Company, I've never heard of them. So I thought they were pretty interesting. Then I thought this DMC booklet, I hadn't seen this before. I really like the dragon. And then this one I had never seen before. This is a black work project, a Chinese junk, which is a type of ship. And in the sails they have like the letter symbols, but I don't think. And then the whole part of the sail is stitched in that letter symbol in backstitch, which I thought was interesting. Oh yeah, and this Blackstone Fantasy Garden from Ink Circles, it's been on my wish list for a while and they had it for cheap, so I figured I'd pick it up. This also has a lot of black work, but in color thread. All the color that you see is black work. And then I have a few searches on eBay for books and other stitchy things. And one of them came up for a cheap price from the UK and I got it. And it is this one. It's a needlepoint book with carpet designs. And I have several needlepoint books and they are fine to convert into cross stitch if you want to. So some examples of the type of tapestries that are in here. I love these. I love the colors. And you can do these on silk as well, silk gauze, which would be absolutely amazing in miniature. I love this one. Or you can do this on regular, you know, cross-stitch fabric, or you can do them on canvas. They would all work. And you can pick your own type of threads. So, oh yeah, this is the last one. Oh no, this is not the last one. But this one really reminds me of some quilt type patterns, which is interesting. And some of these remind me of the patterns that Off the Grid is working on. See, I can't remember her name either. Yeah. Right. These are lovely. Really like these. Oh, this is the last one. I mean, if you love color and you love geometric patterns, look for this kind of oriental rugs or tapestry books or what's the word? Patterns. Yeah, you know, things happen. I lose my words all the time. And then this is a separate thing that I got from a different store. Just little. I saw this when it came out and I had it on my wish list and I was ordering some supplies and I thought, well, might as well. I'm going remarkably fast through all of this. I thought this would be a really long one, but I'm already down to books and, oh yeah, let's have a bit of a rant first, because this is really important and I hope everybody still who started the video is still with me, because in the last few months I have been contacted by 2 different companies by email because they were such a big fan of my Flosstube videos, and they would ask if I would be interested in receiving a sample of what they sell online and if I would do a review. Well, here is my review. What are the names? VIP Cross Stitch and New Craft Day, I will leave the names up here, are basically ripping off cross stitch designers. They sell copies of famous designs by people like Mirabilia, Dimensions, Vervaco. I spent 20 minutes on each of their sites and I had a whole list of designs that I recognized, and most of the things I didn't recognize, I assume they will come from a famous designer as well. And they are selling them for such cheap prices in kits, like €5, €6, €8 for a whole Dimensions kit. You can't tell me that's not legal. Or that's not illegal, I should say. So I replied to their requests and I asked them, you know, I will be happy to cooperate, but I will need some more info in how you work with your artists who design the pictures, because I have a hard time believing that they get a fair price for their work. Both of them did not reply. One of them at least has a whole page on their website about copyright and how they don't want copyrighted pieces on their site. Well, they should do better monitoring then, because it's full. So I want to say to anybody listening and watching, please spread the word about these places. We don't want pirated copyrighted images, because it's hard enough to have designers stick with what they do, what we love them to do. So please don't buy or promote these kind of products. Yeah, rant over for now. So, what did I read? Trigger warning, there will be a few instances of sexual violence and violence in general. I've been having a really good time reading during the summer, because I could go walking and listen to my audiobooks, which was, you know, an hour every time. And I had some longer trips that I had that I could listen to my audiobooks on. So I'm trying to find Goodreads. Let me see. I think the last time, let's see, I hope this is, yeah, date finished. The last book I mentioned was Jane Eyre, I think. So I have read and absolutely loved learning about Henrietta Lacks. The book is called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It is about how the genetic material of a black woman with, I think it was uterus cancer, has been basically used as the prime material for all kinds of cancer research throughout the ages, and still is being used for that reason without her consent. And this book is all about what actually happened, and how the scientific community should deal with this kind of thing from now on, or actually should have dealt with it. Very interesting, and definitely a recommendation for me to read. Fear the Sky was a mediocre science fiction book. Not worth the time. Well, if you really have nothing else to read, you might want to read it. I don't know. Then The Invention of Wings. Yes, I really enjoyed that. Nothing really particular sticks out that I want to mention. But yeah, I gave it 4 stars. The Mountains Sing. Is a book set from the perspective of a Vietnamese family during the time of the revolution and war, and what happened to family members and how they were able to either reunite or not, spanning 3 generations. So it was, for me, who doesn't have a lot of knowledge about what happened in Vietnam and their history, it was a good read to get a better feel of their history. And then I read a book about the assassinations in Norway by Anders Breivik. It's called One of Us, the story of Anders Breivik and the massacre in Norway, which goes into a lot of detail about what happened in his life prior to what happened on Utøya, and the impact of the lives of the people that were killed, and some of the personal stories that the writer has followed and put in the book. I remember vividly when that whole assassination happened, and it was really upsetting, and it was interesting at least to read a bit more about why it happened and if it could have been prevented. And yeah, definitely I gave it 4 stars. Next one I'm going to skip because it's definitely not worth your time. Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I absolutely love this. It is a fantasy story set in a fantasy country, but with definite feelings of like West African countries and cultures. It was absolutely fascinating. I loved it. I didn't feel like it had a lot of tropes that you see in a lot of fantasy stories that you feel like I've read this 1,000 times. So yeah, I think it's a series, so I've put number 2 in the series on my to-read list, and will definitely recommend this first one. Then The Only Woman in the Room, which was interesting. It was a story about, what's her name? Hedy Lamarr. Film star, originally from Austria. And I didn't know this, but she actually married a person who was close to the goings-on prior to the Anschluss of Austria with Nazi Germany, and the political figures that were involved in that. And she also was quite smart and bright, and had information about military developments that they were doing over there, and brought them with her to the US when she fled, and actually developed a system to detect torpedoes, I think. Very interesting to learn more about her story, and actually a little bit of information about someone you might have seen on screen and have not heard what their background was. Then I read Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, an Indian history of the American West, which was a lot of great information, but it felt more like a lecture series than an easy to follow narrative. So each chapter is about a specific event in the, I don't know if you call it the American Indian Wars, but basically everything that happened that pushed a lot of nations from their land, and what happened to a lot of famous names that we know and heard of. Clearly written by someone with knowledge. It was written in the 1970s though, so some of the language in there is not what we would still use today. But all in all, if you want a very in-depth, more historical lecture kind of book, then this is for you. Then I finally finished one of my not audiobooks but real life books, Wij Slaven van Suriname, which is written by a Surinamese author in the 1920s and 30s. Basically one of the first publications that really went into the detail of what the Dutch government did in their colony of Suriname, and how that affected indigenous peoples there, as well as enslaved people that were brought over, and how basically, like most colonial histories, they robbed the country blind and left them with absolutely no way of recovering by themselves without help. Definitely worth a read. If you're from the Netherlands, you need to know this history. Then I read The Eye of the World, which is a fairly long series of sci-fi, more fantasy books. I've seen great reviews of it. I gave it 3 stars because to me, throughout the whole book, it so much felt like reading Lord of the Rings rewritten. And I still haven't decided if I think it was as a tribute or basically just a knockoff. And I am not going to read any of the rest of the series because I think there are better books out there. Then the last I finished is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is not a case that really stuck in my mind, but it might be familiar to more people that live in the United States. This is the telling of a rape victim and the whole process that she went through of preparing for trial, waiting for verdicts and judgment and sentencing, and the aftermath, and what that is like from the perspective of a rape victim. It was really intense, but it was really, really, really well written, and I can only highly recommend that you read this book. Chanel Miller it's called Know My Name because at the time Chanel was known as Emily Doe, the victim in this rape case, and she wanted mainly to write this book to give herself back her name, that she wouldn't be that she would no longer be called, the victim or Emily Doe or Chanel Doe, but that's her name and that's who she is. That's part of who she is. Really powerful. And I'm currently reading The Girl Who Wrote in Silk. I have no judgment yet. I'm only about 10% in. but interesting premise. So, and it's about embroidery, so you know, interesting enough to keep reading for now. So that's all the books that I read. I will always, as always, I leave every information that I talk about in the description box. Then before I move on to my last thing, which is the Dutch facts, I want to mention that I finally had a chance to book a short trip. I'm going to Berlin in November, mainly to go visit all the sites and the museums. I've never been to Berlin. And I just wanted to say that if anybody has any suggestions of where I should go or what I should see, please let me know. I'm always interested. And I've also been, with Denise, I've been looking into seeing if there's any kind of cross-stitch store that I might like to visit. But apparently there are no cross-stitch store anywhere in Berlin. So if you might know of one, let me know. So then the last thing I wanted to do is, I had so much fun last time preparing a little bit of Dutch facts that I went a bit overboard this time because I was triggered a while ago by, I think it was Michelle Bendy who told, I don't know, and it might have been Michelle, I'm not sure. I heard somewhere that it was in the United States, if you're in prison, you're not allowed to vote, which I found surprising. And then I thought, well, I'm not even sure how that works in the Netherlands. So let me find out. So that's what I did. And then there's been quite a few news items about voting systems and how people are voting in different countries, that I figured I might as well do a little net talk. Somebody called it net talk in my last comments, which I thought was brilliant. So let's stick with that, hashtag net talk, and do it about how we vote over here in the Netherlands and just talk about how that works for us. So, as always, the Netherlands is a bit of a confusing place because we have a monarchy, but we also have parliamentary representative democracy. So we have like sort of a mix between parliamentary democracy as well as a constitutional monarchy, which means that we have a parliament that is chosen by the people, but at the head of the government still is a monarch. But the rights of the monarch have been severely diminished in the things that are written down in our constitution. So before I go into the different tiers of government that we have, I just thought I would talk about how our voting system works, because that's basically the same throughout the government tiers for the most part. So each tier of government gets elected for 4 years. So every 4 years we have elections, and only for the national government, like the House of Representatives, they might dissolve within those 4 years because they have like a crisis of government or whatever, there's a scandal or whatever, and then in that case then the cycle is shortened and then we have another elections, but then the new government will have 4 years again. And the only exception is that we also have a voting for European Parliament, which is only every 5 years. So almost all our government bodies and tiers are elected directly by the people, except the first chamber, which is the Senate, which I will talk about later. And who can vote? Well, if you're a citizen of the Netherlands and if you're at least 18 years old, you have the right to vote. But it's also voluntary, so you're not obliged to vote. If you don't want to vote, you don't have to vote. I know there are countries that you have a voting obligation, but that's not the case here. And there are very, very few exceptions that people will be restricted from voting. Over here, there's only two main groups. One is if you are mentally disabled and you are allowed to vote, but only if you can you can get some assistance from the polling station, but you have to do the voting in the booth yourself. So if you can't do that, then it's very limited in what you can do. You might still be able to use like a mandate or a mail-in voting in that case. But that's one of the only restrictions we have. We used to have that if you were in prison for more than 1 year, you would not be allowed to vote. But we scrapped that rule in the 80s. And now it's so that if you are sentenced for a specific crime and your judgment says you're guilty and your sentence is more than 1 year, then the judge can also take away your right to vote mostly for only a temporary time, so like 5 years or 10 years. And that's only done in cases where the crime that you are sentenced for is is viewed as a direct assault on our democracy or our political organization. So if you're a terrorist or something like that. And in fact, I could not find any case of this happening that a judge actually agreed with the public prosecution who had demanded for taking away of voting rights, that the judge actually agreed with them. So the only case that I could find was directly after the Second World War, when some people that were members of the Nazi SS or the Dutch version of the Nazi party their voting rights had been taken away. So in total, less than 25 people at this moment in the Netherlands have had their voting rights revoked. The election cycle is every 4 years, and usually the elections are held in March and sometimes in May. It may depend a bit on if there are multiple elections or not. And the political parties in the Netherlands are organized in a way that anyone can start a party if you have enough people backing you and saying that we want this party to happen. And excuse me. And political parties can apply for a government subsidy for finances to run the party. And they can also get income through paid members, so membership contributions, or like additional fundraising activities. But by law, every donation that they receive above a certain amount, which is at the moment is 4,500 euros, every donation that goes to a political party has to be made public and reported to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. And this is cumulative, so if they want to get around it and someone says, well, I'll pay you a monthly 3,000 euros, that is cumulative, so they still would have to make that public. Also, if it's from a donation from a country outside of the Netherlands, they always have to make it public, no matter what the threshold is, so no matter what the amount of money is. And I thought I'd look up some yearly reports to see what's in there. And they do, in fact, include lists of this person paid this much, this person paid this much. And for the parties that I looked up, that kind of donation is not the biggest part of their budget. So the main part of their budget comes from their own membership contributions and government subsidies. And I could find no examples of companies actually donating money to political parties. And then the campaigning. So if there's an election called, then they have usually a maximum of 40 days to campaign, because by law, when the House of Representatives disassembles, they have by law only 40 days to have new elections. So we don't have like a year-long campaign or whatever. It's usually about a month. Wow. So if you're a political party and you want to go door to door, that's usually only allowed during campaigns. Or you want to be like on a market square flyering, that's usually done only during campaign time. If you want to do it outside of that, usually you have to have a permit for it. And I rarely see people flyering outside of the normal election campaign time. And then during campaign time, they also get public television debates, national debates, so that political parties are invited to those to be on television for broadcast, and they can, if they want, they can also buy advertising time. That's about all I could find. So the election is the actual voting is only on one day. So usually the polling stations open around 7:30 and they close at 9 p.m. So you only have one day to vote, and I think it's usually a work day. But you can also you can vote in person, or you can delegate someone to vote in person for you, or you can do mail-in voting. And then how does your vote count? Well, every polling station adds up the total amount of votes that were cast that day, and they divide it by, and then the total of all the polling stations, all the totals are added up, so you have a total of all the votes cast in the whole country, and then that is divided by the number of seats that are available, and then that way they allocate the seats to the number of votes. So basically, usually your vote counts directly towards whoever you vote for to get a seat. And if they don't get past that threshold, like the number of votes divided by the number of seats, that's called the voting threshold. If they are below that, they won't get a seat. But if they are above that, then they get at least one seat or more, depending on how many votes they get. And sometimes, the list of people you vote for, usually every party has a few people that they have selected that they are ranked from 1 to whatever number that you can vote for, and most people tend to vote for the one on the top, like that's called like the party representative. And then they divide whatever votes the number one gets over the next one. So if they get enough votes for 3 people, the first 3 on the list should get a seat. But sometimes you can also do preferential voting. So sometimes there is one specific person on a list that people really want to support, and they vote for them, and they might not be in the top 10 of the list. But if they get enough votes on their name, then they will get what's called a preferential seat, and they will get in anyway. So it can happen that, for instance, a party has 10 people on their list, and they only get enough votes for 2 seats. But number 5 on the list has enough preferential votes, so that means that number 1 on the list and number 5 on the list will get a seat. I hope that makes sense. The last thing is that if you want to be if you're like a new political party and you want to be included in the list of people that people can vote for, you have to register for that. And if you have been in prior elections and won a seat in prior elections, you don't have to do much. You are automatically on the list. But if you're new or you were in prior elections but did not get a seat, then you have to provide additional backing, like letters of support or signatures, that enough people support what you stand for, so that if that threshold is reached, you can be added onto the list of people that you can vote for. If you don't get enough backers, like if you want to be the party of cats, I don't know, and there's only 5 people who signed that they agree that there should be a party for cats, then you don't get on the list because that's not enough support. which also means that at the last elections we had something like 30 parties registered for the national elections. Oh, awesome. Anyway, time for some maps. Because, as I mentioned, we have several tiers of government. And we're going to go from local to regional to national. So local governments, we call them municipalities or city councils. And that means that every tiny area in the country has their own municipal council. And that means that municipal council has certain tasks that are normally run by the central government delegated to them, so that they can be in charge of things like local trash collection, urban development, and also schooling and infrastructure and social affairs, like they arrange for welfare and unemployment and all that kind of stuff on the local level. And they do that, they get financed by the central government, and additional financing comes from local taxes like your property tax or your trash tax, things like that. And we at the moment have about 350 municipalities. And I found a map with all the borders of the municipalities painted in with their local flag, which is hilarious. So I thought I would show you. I mean, it can't make any sense out of this, but it shows you how many small areas we have that people are allowed to vote for their local government. And like over here, you can still see the crosses of Amsterdam. They have 3 crosses in their local flag, but most of the flags are unidentifiable. But I thought it was funny. So that's the most local tier of government. And the mayor is the head of the municipal or city council. The mayor is not elected, by the way. The mayor is appointed. Then we have 3 separate special municipalities, which are 3 of the former Dutch Antilles islands in the Caribbean. They are Bonaire, Sint Eustace, and Saba, and they have the status of municipality within our kingdom, but they have their own local elections. So for municipality elections, they have their island elections, and then they also partake in the national House of Representatives elections. And then there were 3 more Dutch Antilles islands that became independent countries. Those are the Sint Maarten, Aruba, and Curaçao, and they are autonomous countries, but they are still part of our kingdom. So they have their own electoral system, and I don't think they vote for our House of Representatives either. So one step up from local to regional is our provinces, which you could compare them to counties or maybe states. So they are like, we have 12 in total. I've shown you a similar picture before. So these are our 12 provinces. And they have provincial councils. And like the local governments, like the city and municipal councils, they get tasks delegated from the central governments, which often relate to like public transport or the groundwater quality, drink water supply, environmental contamination, that kind of regulations, but also things like nature preservation and bigger infrastructural projects. Interestingly enough, there are a few of the bigger cities like Amsterdam, The Hague, Rotterdam, who are cities or municipal councils, but they have been given the legal status of similar to a province, so they share some of the same tasks that a province gets. They do themselves as a big city. Provinces are again financially supported by the national government, and they also have regional taxes, but they also get money from giving out permits for things like environmental licenses, things like that. And the head of the Provincial Council is what we call the Commissioner to the Monarch, and they are also appointed, not elected. Then we have a sort of in-between weird regional thing, which is very important in our country, like I discussed previously, which is called the Waterschap, which is like a water authority, water board kind of organization. But the only thing they are tasked with is the management of surface water. So managing rivers, canals, dikes, polders, that kind of thing, groundwater level, flood prevention. That's all they are tasked with. And we have 21 of those, which sort of matches the provinces, but not quite. And again, they are the representative in the council for the Waterschap are elected. I think that they are usually held on the same day as the provincial elections. I'm not quite sure, but they are financed fully by local taxation. So we pay taxes for the upkeep of our water systems. And the head of the water authority has the best name of them all. So the head of the council is called Dijkgraaf. If you literally translate it, it would be the Count of Dikes. I mean, come on. But it's more like a warden, so Dike warden or something like that. Still best name, I think, of them all. So then we get to the national level, so that's our national government. We have what is called Staten-Generaal, which is the General States, which is our government, which consists of two chambers. The second chamber, which is comparable to House of Representatives. And then we have, which is more for the legislative branch of government. And then we have the first chamber, which we also call Senate, and it's comparable to Senate. They are the they are for the, let's just do the second chamber first before I get confused. So the second chamber is like the House of Representatives. That's like Parliament, basically. They make all the laws, policies for economics, healthcare, all that kind of thing. And they have EU relationships. There is a total of 150 seats. That's a set amount of seats. So there's all the parties that participate, all the votes have to be divided over 150 seats. As I said, we have multiple political parties, so that means that if we have national elections, I think it's been quite a while since we had a case where one party had the majority vote, so the majority number of seats in the parliament, which means that whoever wins elections, it always means they have to form some kind of coalition with multiple parties to make a majority in the House, in the second chamber. So they would need 76 seats to have a majority. So last few elections we've had coalitions of usually 3 to 4 parties who together have majority seating. But that also means that if you campaign and you promise certain things to your voters, you might have to compromise on those when you actually go into coalitions with other parties. At the moment we have, from those 30-something parties that we could vote for, 16 of them got at least one seat in the House at the moment. And then we also have 5 in the what we call independent seats, which are seats by former party members who broke off from the party after the last election and are sitting as independent in the current parliament. Within the second chamber, like the House of Representatives, the major parties that form the coalition also form what's called the cabinet. which is the group of ministers that actually come with the proposals for legislation. The ministers are not directly voted for, but they are proposed from the parties that that form the coalition. So they are members of the parties that form the coalition. And together with the prime minister, they form what we call the actual government. So the prime minister is the chairman of the cabinet, which is the group of ministers, and they are all part of the House of Representatives. The prime minister, again, is not directly voted for, but usually it's the number one on the list of the party with the most votes. Although that has not always been the case, it's not mandatory that it's the number one of the party with the most votes. We have seen examples in the 80s when the party with the most votes, the number one on the list, did not become prime minister, but someone else from their party became prime minister. And we've also seen in the 70s that the party with the most votes did not provide the actual prime minister, but it came from a party associated with them. But since the 90s, we haven't had that happen. So usually it's the number one on the list of the biggest party. So the prime minister, we call him minister-president or premier. Premier is French for prime. What else can we say? So that's what I wanted to say about the second chamber. Then the first chamber, the Senate, they actually decide the proposals for legislative changes or new laws that the second chamber has made and has agreed on are sent to the Senate for like a legal check to see if they are within the Constitution and that the constitutional rights are not invaded on. And then when they agree, then the law is passed into actual law. There are 75 seats in the Senate, and they are not directly voted for. So the members of the Senate are voted for by the Provincial Council. So indirectly, if you vote for Provincial Council, then the parties that win that election actually provide the people for the Senate. That's all I have to say about that. And then above all of that, beside our national government, we have European government, European Parliament. The Netherlands is part of the European Union, which means that we share like the same financial system, so we have the same currency, but there are also different kind of things that we share, like we can travel without passport. Well, we can easily travel across borders within the European Union, and that is all based on the fact that we have a European Parliament, because they arrange for things like European legislation around topics like climate change, consumer protection, economics, and they do that on a European scale. So everyone who's part of the European Union has to agree with the European laws as well, or the European Constitution. So the European Parliament has 705 seats, and we have currently 27 member states. So the seats of European Parliament are divided over the member states based on population count. So that means that the more populous you are, the more seats you have in European Parliament. And the Netherlands has 29 of the 705 seats. And it is policy that there's no national parties that can take part in European Parliament. So the European Parliament consists of sort of political factions, which are grouped into factions like left-wing, right-wing, central, liberal, green, Christian. That sort. I think there's 7 in total, and then the national parties that affiliate with a certain faction will join that faction. So every faction has at least 7 member states that should supply parties or elect people that people can vote for into that faction. So when you vote for European Parliament, once every 5 years, you vote for not your standard political parties that you have in your own country, but you vote for a specific faction. So if you are more liberally inclined, you might vote central right, or if you are more socialist inclined, you might vote more left wing, whatever. That's all I had to say. That was my TED Talk, my net talk. And that concludes this video, which I kept under an hour, which is amazing. And that's about it. That's all I think of to share. I'm looking at my notes. And yeah, that was it. So I hope to see you again next time. I have no clue when that will be. By the looks of things, it will be another 2 months. I don't know. I've been having a lot of migraines and I've been busy, and so I haven't been either physically in the right place or mentally in the right place to actually record. So this is what it is. And well, we'll see when next time will come around. And until that time, I hope you stay well. I hope you will stay stitching. And if you have any suggestions about Berlin, I hope you will leave them in the comments. And if you have anything else to say, I hope you also will leave that in the comments. See you next time. Bye, guys.